Ashna, I'm going to give my feedback on your portfolio, okay? Then you can decide if it's something which you want to take on, or you can decide if something which you don't want to take on. As you probably already know, I'm doing this kind of like coaching about like I would say 6 to 12 months ago, more or less. I'm doing this portfolio reviews quite often. And you know, my standards are like quite high in terms of like how a portfolio should look like. Because you know I want to be straightforward with everyone, and you know whatever I say is like take it with a grain of salt. Obviously, me myself, I don't know anything more than other people, although I have like 5 years of experience in designing. I also been in situations when I was hiring other designers, and as I said, I'm also constantly trying to improve other people's portfolios. And when I come into your portfolio, I feel like there is definitely, I would say like it makes me feel like I'm looking at a junior designer's portfolio. Just in general, the aesthetics and sort of the animations as well, and everything, just all over the feeling which I get is like, you know, it has been created from someone who is not that experienced in designing, which could be from, you know, I think just this animation and overall the structure, for example, for this headline, I think it's quite weird here and there. It's not really professional. Also, these boxes, sort of, which are showing your projects, they are also a little bit, I would say, unconventional. And I know that, you know, when we are like starting off designing, we always want to be creative, we want to be unique. But on the other hand, like following design patterns and following like designs which already had been proven on the market, I think as a junior, I wouldn't encourage people to like, you know, make something new, make something unique. I think it's better to like stick with something which already has been working, and this which already has been proved by the market. That will be the first thing. Second thing which I noticed that you have two other projects. One is like a branding project, and the one is like a AI image generated project. The thing is that if you are looking for getting hired for UX UI design positions, I also would not recommend having anything else other than UX UI design positions in your portfolio, because in general it's a nice touch that you have other capabilities like branding, graphic design, or using AI tools. But when it comes to like, let's say I'm a recruiter, I'm looking at your portfolio, I only want to see good designs. Basically, I only want to see applications, dashboard, websites, because I'm looking for a UX UI designer, right? If I was looking for a graphic designer, like a brand designer, maybe I would be happy to see like other kind of projects. But in this case, I would limit your work to like only free, and only show free work which is UX UI related. Which also comes to my mind, that here the images, these are the thumbnails for your project light, right? These images should be thought about in a way that how you think about, for example, a YouTube thumbnail, right? So when you are seeing a YouTube thumbnail, you immediately want to click on the video just because of the thumbnail, right? And so as the title also should resemble that. Sort of your preview of the project should immediately spark curiosity inside the viewer, which can be done by a nice thumbnail and a nice headline. So yeah, now you could ask like, okay, how is it going to be nice? So for example, for this project, actually, I like this thumbnail, although the image is not really sharp, so definitely do something about it. But for example, here the thumbnail is like somewhat is working. Also, the headline should be bug bites. You know, if you're already showing in the headline that sort of like what is the problem, or like what is this project is going to be about, it's already like much more interesting. Although I understand that, you know, it's written here in the subtitle, but I would rather recommend of like, you know, somehow focusing on the title a little bit more, of like sparking more curiosity. And in general, it's better to like use a thumbnail image which is already like showing good parts and good bits from the project itself. So when I was looking
like,
at, yeah.
you mean instead of like showing the title of the project, I should focus on writing what it is about?
No, I mean like, for example, Ahmed, a holistic healthcare application for care seekers. Okay, so for example, here the title could be something like a healthcare application which was solving, I don't know, whatever problem, or like we created Ahmed because we wanted to, I don't know, solve this problem, or like I don't
Yeah.
know. So for something like which is more like summarizing your project, but not only just like summarizing it in a one sentence, but it's also should be like a hook for your project, right? You
Yeah.
wanna hook people in, you wanna make it interesting. And again, going back to the thumbnail, just show something from your application. That's the best way of doing that. So for example, if I come here, like for example, here you already show like a few screenshots and flows from your application. It would be much better if I would immediately see it here rather than the icon, for example. So I would immediately going to have more idea of like, okay, what's going to be inside. And we are doing these measures because as I probably said like many times, recruiters spending really less time on our case studies, right?
Yeah.
So we wanna make it as interesting as possible, as straightforward as possible. It's sort of like when you're talking to children, you cannot really or yeah, you cannot really be too complicated. You cannot you always have to be straightforward with what you are doing, what you want, what is the outcome of what you are doing. You also wanna talk in simple ways, I would say. And for example, here I immediately going to see like what's going on here, what I could expect if I click here. So it's like a better experience, I would say. Okay, let's go through your work. Okay. So just in general, when I was looking through your different case studies, I'm not going to go to the branding and to the AI generated case studies just for the sake, because I don't think they are important in this portfolio review. But when I was looking your work, I had the idea that basically they are like quite first of all, the fact that it's like being like one big image. I think you created it in Figma, then you imported it here and did like as an image. I really not recommending that, because this way, first of all, even if I like just for me to like understand the text is for example, I cannot copy it, I cannot zoom in it, it's not going to be responsive. What else I wanted? Also, a lot of places I think just the quality is like a little bit lower than if you would have like actually built up a website. um, that's just in general, but I don't know if you did here you also used an image. But just in general, for this project and for this project, I mean, this one is maybe a little bit better because this first one, the element, even if I could say that the application itself is looking well, is like working well, even though I think there would be like a lot of instance where it could be improved, the design itself, but let's just say the design is like okay for now. Still the the portfolio, sorry, the case study itself is like still kind of like all over the place, and I think there is just too many different layouts, too many different kind of explanations. It's also like something subjective, but I highly prefer case studies which are like more minimalistic, more clear, more straight to the point. Also, we have to understand that recruiters does not have, as I said, too much time, and they don't want to try to spend too much time understanding all of your research. That's why I would rather recommend of focusing on like creating a portfolio which is more or less focusing let's give you like an example, which is focusing more like on imagery and just like a summary of the project, sort of. You don't have to talk about everything. Definitely don't just include images about your designs, but basically you would rather just have a headline, a title, and then like sort of like summarizing like what happened in that section. This is going to result in like a much cleaner, much more modernized case study. It's not going to be requiring too much effort from the recruiter or hiring manager to understand what's going on. And also, if you are using less kind of like graphic elements in your case study, when I may say like graphic elements, I mean like this kind of like different numbers, different way of like showing data. Even though it's important to talk about these things, just the way that the fact that there is like a lot of different kind of way of showing and talking about one thing is making everything like a little bit more like if I just scroll through it, it's going to make me feel sort of like all over the place, right? The layout is not consistent, the edges, sort of the margins and the paddings are not consistent either. There is just like it's going to give me this feeling that it has been created like someone from like a beginner designer. Um, like for example here, I think when you're talking about the different flows, it's like a little bit better because as you can see, there is, first of all, there is like a lot of white space around it. There is the actual application being in the focus, and also there is like more like just focusing on the text and the application. And it's already like, just if I'm looking at only this part, like the end of this whole design, is like giving me like a better idea of what the application is about. So my recommendation would be to like go back to the research part, try to make it like a little bit simpler, even though keep what is really, really important, but try to just explain everything in like simple terms, in with less text, less sections, with less graphical elements, because in this case less is more actually, because we are giving easier time for the recruiters, and it's going to be a little bit more straightforward. And by the way, I think this project of yours, the bug bites, is like a good example of how it could be done better, because for example here as well, although I think like for example
Quite direct.
yeah, the user personas are not really important, so I probably would skip these. But just in general here, there is like not so much stuff going on. This is like one column in the middle. Obviously you were using like different kind of elements, but more or less I could say that it's like more minimalistic. There is less information, even though you probably went through the same design process, right? And that's why it's like I think an easier time to consume it, because just simply there is less information, which makes it more consumable. Read about the research interviews. And by the way, this is a really good tactic which I usually recommend for people of using, because you know, a case study's point is not necessarily that you want to talk about everything which you've done in a project. A case study's point or goal is to showcase for recruiters and designers that you are capable of doing, to go through the design thinking process, and you're capable of making nice looking designs. And that's why it's important to like actually even like already at the beginning like showcasing your work, right? This is what's going to already like sort of like position you as like a good designer, because they already immediately see that you're a good designer. What I wanted, like for example here in the top, I think that's a really good thing that you already showing the application. I would recommend doing the same thing with the bug bites project as well, like just showing screens of like maybe a few screens about the main flow, maybe like a summary of the screens, like what's going on here. But for example, I like this case study a lot better.
Okay.
This one, I think it's more or less nice. And again, by the way, if you just look at the way how you were distributing information here, I definitely prefer this one, because there is like not so much stuff going on. Obviously it has like a distinct design direction, which is fine, but like there is not so much stuff going on. There is like a headline, there is a little bit of text briefly explaining like what's going on, and this is going to give me like a much better experience overall of like, you know, just scrolling through it basically. And of course, like, yeah, I can see that you actually put like a lot of effort into like creating this stuff. Yeah, this is good overall. Yeah,
You said like I should not put images from Sigma to like, but because like every case study I first created in Sigma and they just imported the images. So like what is the right way to do it then?
I didn't
Like this
say,
is made on Wix.
I didn't say you don't put images. I said or I don't know if I even said that don't put images. I said like, when I said like images, maybe just like not really lead with a lot of like visuals in terms of like these kind of visuals. So it's like sort of like
Okay.
I mean, you definitely have to put and use as much visual from your application. So that's why, for example, it's a better example here that you have the dashboard and the different kind of designs from it. This definitely is important and have to be in there. But just I'm talking about the research explanation, because this is the part where a lot of people really going overboard of like what needs to be included, and really just over complicating explaining the research, even though it's not that important in the case study itself. But definitely using images and using your screenshots and prototype recordings in your case studies is important, really, really important. Um, yeah, and when it comes to like getting inspiration for your case studies, I'm sure you have your ways of getting inspirations. In my courses and in my teachings, I highly recommend checking out the framework templates because usually they are really like a good um, direction in terms of like how a minimalistic looking clear case study is looking like, and usually this is what I'm trying to push as well. Obviously you still have to explain your decision making, your design process, but leading with high quality, good, cool images, talking a little bit less about your process but keep having the important information, leading with your images, leading with your work itself, um, and just not overgoing with all the research methods, making it really messy. It's going to result in a much easier case study, which is easy to consume, easy to scan, and this is the goal. This is what we are going for, right? Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, our user persona is going to be the recruiter, right? They are the first gatekeeper between you and your next interview, so that's why we have to convince them. And I think the reason why you got invited for interviews, because for example this project of yours, for example, this looks clean, it's having like a lot of images, a lot of visuals, and I think it feels quite convincing, you know, that you know what you are doing. And I would recommend of like doing the same kind of style for your other projects as well. And also just what I was telling you at the beginning, changing these elements. This one, definitely show your application here.
Yeah.
And just take away these two other application which is not UX UI design related. I think it doesn't really make too
Yeah.
much sense here. You can keep them, but I just don't see the point of keeping them here. Maybe on Dribble you can
Okay.
include them, or maybe you can upload them on your Behance. But to be honest, I don't think they are adding anything to for your how do I say it?
Yeah, it
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah, evaluation for you as a designer. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any question?
Uh, yeah, like I would like to ask a little bit about interviews, and like I attended your session yesterday.
Oh, that's cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So over there you talked about like presenting case studies more effectively.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know like what are the ways in which we can show business goals as well in our case study, because like being a junior, I'm not working on actual projects. So
Okay.
is there any way?
So when I said like presenting your work more effectively, what I mainly think about that you're going to be asked to like usually during the interview rounds at some point they're going to ask you to show one of your work, and when
Yeah.
you can going to be asked that, it's either you can pull up one of your work like and share your screen like I'm doing right now, but a better way for doing that is like creating an actual presentation about one of your work, which is basically like a slide by slide about your work, and it's not going to contain a lot of text, mainly just this kind of like graphical images, but in most cases leading with like more like the images from the application itself, where basically you want to tell the same story as it's being here in the case study, right? What was the problem which I wanted to solve? How did I do the research? Why it was the problem? Who was the target audience? How I was, you know, thinking about the problem, how I was creating the design, how the features are solving this problem, whatever. You want to tell the same story, what you would do here in your case study, but you are not making it as a case study. You are making it as like a presentation. So what's the difference between a presentation and a case study? Really good question. Um, Basically, a presentation is, first of all, it's not containing too much text, and you would have to like sort of memorize like at which uh, page what you want to talk about. And it's rather just like here is like an image of the user persona, here is an image from, I don't know, the first maybe one of your research methods like flows, for example. Maybe there is like an image for the features itself, but you would not like make it text heavy. It's just like image after image after image, and this way you would present your work and tell the story of your work rather than like just like pulling up your work and just stride through it and talk about it. This way you can sort of like control the environment a little bit better, and control of like what you want to talk about and how you want to talk about it and what you want to show from your project as well. it's quite similar to like a case study, but it's like put in a different packaging, I would say. It's like put in a different way how you're presenting your work, because it's an actual presentation which made for the purpose of like, okay, now I'm going to present like one of my work during the interview, then you're going to pull it up, and it's like a keynote presentation, or like any presentation basically. This is what
Okay.
I mean mainly. I recommend of doing that. Back then I was doing it a lot of times, that I was just like literally like I'm showing it to you now. I was pulling one of my work from my portfolio, I was scrolling through it, I was telling the story, typing the research methods, everything which I've done. um, and then it was still working. But recently I have like one presentation with one of my favorite work which I can talk a lot about, because I have like a lot of work in there. And the presentation is just like much better suited for like actually showing it for people, rather than just like scrolling through my case study basically.
And also,
Yeah.
like yesterday, you told about like when even you are looking for a junior designer,
Mm-hmm.
you are not just looking for someone who is able to design screens.
Yeah.
So, like, I would like to know like what are the other skills I am expected to know if I am applying for a junior position.
So just in general, like being trustworthy, being there on time, being like a good communicator, being, I would say, like I don't know if it's the good word of straightforward, but like during the interview you don't wanna act like and seem like and feel like that someone who is needing a lot of help, and you don't have to be lying or like proving that you know everything, because definitely not. But you just want to somehow convey that you are capable of carrying out projects yourself, because in most projects we are even if we are working in teams, we are expected to work um, independently, right?
Yeah.
And this is also what you want to highlight during when you are talking about your features, that you're saying that I was doing this, I was creating this, I went to here, I was talking to this one, I was analyzing the data. Obviously if you did it in a team, include it, but just more or less sort of making the expression that you are capable of doing things yourself, and you are still requiring like management and then help from team members. Like usually this is still what I'm saying during interviews, like I'm still being more relaxed in work if I know that there is like a senior designer or lead designer who I can go to if I have any problems. But still I prefer independent working, because this and this and this and this. So you still don't have to say that you want to work alone, because it's definitely not the right way of saying that, but just improve, or how I say, proving that you are capable of doing work by yourself, and showing it, because as designers it's more or less you're going to do everything almost by yourself, and getting feedback from your senior designer stakeholders from the team, but more or less you have to carry out stuff by yourself. So you want to convey that you can actually go out, figure out yourself, you can take responsibility for your work. These are the things which is, I think, important, and which I want to see. And obviously like being good at communication, I think I also mentioned it yesterday, that just like practicing communication, like how are you um, opening to people, like for example now at the beginning you were asking like, hey, I seen you are from Berlin, are you still living here, for example. That's like a good way of like starting a conversation, and this way you are already taking the lead, right? This way you're already showing that you are not like passively like waiting for things to happen, you are actually going out and doing stuff to happen. This would be like a good example which you did really well of like showing that
Okay.
you're sort of like out not outgoing, but like going for the things. How do it, you are not like just not passively, but like actively looking for opportunities basically. Because as designers, everything is like about like testing, figuring out, checking if it's working, talking to a lot of people, making your own conclusions, making assumptions, and then you want to test them if they are true or not. It's sort of like experimentation a lot of times. And that's why we as designers, we have to be like sort of like you have to be able to work on by yourself, because a lot of cases like the project is going to be up to you, right? So yeah, that would be it. I mean, probably maybe not every company. I also worked at companies where I've been, I wouldn't say micromanaged a lot, but like definitely I was under like tighter scope. So I think it somewhat depends on the company, but more or less we are expected to like work independently in our work. So basically just like showcasing that you're capable of doing by yourself and you are like a go-getter, maybe. I'm not sure that that's the right word, but you get my point basically.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Um,
Welcome.
Last thing, like I would like to know is about LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Like yesterday also you told about like optimizing your LinkedIn.
Yes.
So is there any way that like where can I learn from?
Actually, if you go to, it's not that complicated though. In the classroom, you can find a dedicated section only for that matter. Okay, so you go to the classroom, book, classroom, get hired basics, and here I uploaded like a dedicated sections about LinkedIn. But just in general, it's like 60 minutes just talking and showing of like how to optimize LinkedIn. There are other sections which are including LinkedIn, but LinkedIn optimization here I'm explaining more or less everything which I know about optimizing LinkedIn. But just in general, having connections on LinkedIn, having a good portfolio, a good header, a good headline in your text, just filling in all the information which you have on LinkedIn, and being active on LinkedIn. If you post like a few of your works, just writing like a small caption for it, showing your work, putting in your education, putting in your certificates. If you have any friends, people, classmates, alumni, teachers, anything like this, asking for asking for testimonials and recommendation. I'm also showing it this in this video of how you can do that. What is the best way of doing that? Just basically filling out your LinkedIn profile as much as possible and be regularly active on LinkedIn, at least until you get hired, because then the algorithm is going to put you in a better place. Once, for example, a recruiter is searching for designers in LinkedIn, for example, maybe your name is also going to pop up if you are being active on LinkedIn and the algorithm is sort of like favoring you because you've
Yeah.
been active and you're like an active member of LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you just come to the classroom here on the top, you will have the get hired
And like on
basics.
the first module, so I think I just missed that LinkedIn optimization.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. You can also go however you want, but still as well, you can just jump in between different parts of
Yeah.
like whatever you need. They are like more or less built on top of another, but still, you know, if you only you have like an interview coming up, you can just come here and quickly go through the interviewing stages and interviewing stuff which you have to know. So feel free to like jump
Okay.
around. Okay,
Sure.
but more or less just
Yeah.
like fill in everything, make it as full as possible, be active there, get connections, make like a nice headline, head image, like a profile image, a background, and then it should work.
Okay.
But it can be done inside like a few days maximum, so it's not like a portfolio creation.
That's all I wanted to ask.
Okay,
And like thank you for the comments. I'll like take note and make improvements accordingly. So,
welcome.
yeah.
I hope you're going to be able to use it. But the fact that you already landed a few interviews with your current portfolio, that's a good um, first impression that you know companies are interested about you. But I think if you can just make these few changes which I recommended,
Yeah,
it's going to be much better. Also, optimizing your LinkedIn account is important, right? But just
yeah,
making these few changes, trying to find like better images as thumbnails, making it like a little bit more exciting, a little bit like
yeah,
streamlining your explanations, less focusing on the research, more focusing on the actual design itself, is going to make it much better. Also, do something about this hero structure. I really don't enjoy
yeah,
it.
I will.
Maybe if you just like the fact that I think there is like just so many things going on at the same time, it's not really how do I say it, mm, you know, for example, if that would be just like hello, it would stay, or maybe it can still move. But like if you take away these dots, if you take away the background color, this black one, if you also just use like normal capitals, not like big
Yeah,
capitals, um, yeah, I think the buttons themselves, if you take the stroke away and if you make the button just white by general, by default, it's already going to look like much better because there will be
better.
not so
Yeah,
much stuff going on. And maybe if you can find like a or maybe if you can like slow down this arrow as well, I think it would
Okay.
also help to like, because now it's being like too aggressive, I think. Just like,
Yeah, and like there are two animations running
yeah,
simultaneously. Yeah.
yeah. But just like make it also like simple, and the more time I'm spending in design, I always like realize that actually in design, and not only in design, I think in every creative job, every creative field, a lot of time less is actually being more. And I know it
Yeah.
sounds cliche, but like this is what I'm realizing over time, because if I look back at my own older designs as well, I also feel like that sort of I wanted to overcompensate or like overdo all the time, because I wanted to prove for everyone else that I'm a good designer. Therefore, I trying to do a lot of things at the same time. But even though if you do less things but focusing more on those less things, it's actually going to go or result in like a better outcome, just because those less things going to be higher quality in general.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Ashna, if you have any question, message me in the group, okay? If nothing
Okay,
else,
yeah,
I'm
sure.
just going to drop now. It was lovely talking to you. I hope you're going to
Like,
do really well in the future. If I can do anything for you, just message me, okay?
okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.